Okay, so thank you very much for coming. Just wanted to explain a little bit about the idea for where tonight came from. So Scott and the rest of the team, we were just having one of our UX stand-ups, and we were kind of, I suppose, just having a bit of banter, and we were talking about Monty Python. And one of the skits from Monty Python was a central theme about what have they ever done for us? And so the idea was, well, actually we reversed that onto ourselves and said, well, what have we ever done for everybody else? So then that turned into a bit of a quick kind of brainstorm, and we said, well, actually that's kind of a fun idea. So if we imagine ourselves through the eyes of a client and said, you know, as a UXer, what has that UXer ever done for us? What have they done? So it was just something fun to play with, and it was like, well, if they haven't done it, then they should have done it. And so the reason for this visual in the backdrop is we all love making stuff because we're makers at heart, and we love building stuff, but in the rush to build, sometimes we can overlook certain things because it's nice to get hands on. So we just thought we'd explore that idea, and we ditched the Monty Python bit because it gets a bit abstract.
Yeah,
a little bit. That was the start.
Yeah, and some of the themes just started sort of rolling off the tongue, like the points that we can add value to, kind of started to like build like building blocks for like the process and like hold true to, you know, our value, I suppose. So yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So just to introduce ourselves, Scott's one of our senior designers and design manager. Crossover with Gravity 9, and got extensive experience in lots of different sectors. I'm a practice director, so we were kind of throwing around our ideas with the rest of the team. So this, what you see today, represents kind of collective thinking. Anyway, so we'll jump in. So this is kind of part of the thought process, and it was kind of fun to think about this image. We actually generated it in AI by recycling the Beastie Boys cover. So we started off and just kind of experimented with it, but it was the idea that you could think about it from different personas, and what's that person? You know, I'm building this product, or I'm in this lifestyle situation. What has the UXer ever done for me? Or me? So this guy's obsessing about building his beer lava lamp. So the start of this kind of question for us begins with user need exploration. And, you know, if we start to say, well, if we're going to start a problem off, it has to be evidence-based. You want to be an evidence-based design. And too often, when you're dealing with the real world of business problems, is that you can start off with a tech need, but you're not actually exploring the customer insights. So it's too often it's about the business and not enough about the user. So what you need to get to is a customer insight point where that's informing design development decisions, and it should be data rather than opinion or personal assumption. So it's not the loudest voice in the room, or it's not the loudest stakeholder. We actually need to know what's the nature and the origin of the problem. And this is one of your problems, isn't it, Scott?
It is, yeah. So the image there is of us on a field study in Vegas, working with one of our clients, basically trying to access a property digitally, and kind of, although we're part of the building of that experience, experiencing it in real life is completely different. So there's problems with it that sometimes you don't get to experience, obviously, without the real experience. So it wasn't as sort of straightforward as we thought it was going to be, and then obviously from that point, we've got fresh insights on how we can develop the product and iterate on it. So obviously that's just like at the point of research and getting out there is obviously very important.
Well, this tool's really it's an interesting one. It starts off with the principle of let yourself into a property. So it's avoiding that human reliance on scheduling, and solves a massive amount of problems. It seemed initially that the answer was just a small iteration of the current product, But when the guys went on site, it was like, how many UXers does it take to open a door? You know, there's actually 4 because there's three trying to operate it and 1 recording it. You know.
Yeah.
So it's you know it's only by getting out into the fields and exploring these problems and building that evidence base that you can really start to do some useful design. And then, you know, looking at the nature of the people that are going to use your software product, and there's a lot of talk obviously about personas, and you know, for some people that are UX designers, personas are a cliche, and you're like, oh my God, don't talk about personas. But you know, be careful when you're creating a persona that you choose a broad base. And this guy is fantastic. He's like, you know, the story here is don't rely on Superman, because he is Superman. Like, he's so tooled up in his knowledge and his experience and his can-do attitude. If you build your service design persona based on him, you don't have a fleet of this guy. You have other guys that probably care less and have less experience, possibly, but at least research it and know that you are building a broad brush. You're not building a persona because we care about what their favourite cat is or their compatible star signs. We want to know problems to solve, skills, scenarios. That's all we're interested in. So when you're a good UX design solution would be that the designer goes out and says and does some discovery into what are the insights into the behaviour, what are the exact circumstances that person's operating in, is this person replicable, or are they an edge case, and only from that can you create an informed design decision, because you know you've got something that has broad appeal and broad usefulness.
Yeah, exactly that. And so, like, for instance, he was going through scenarios, so dealing with maintenance, and you know, people leave properties in certain states because they've just got sort of frustrated and annoyed, but sort of that, no one sort of ever asked the question as to why they were doing it, or what led to them kind of getting that frustrated that they would kind of leave the property that they were living in a really bad sort of manner. So that's kind of like why, again, we say, you know, it's like you should get the rounded perspective. Don't rely on Superman, but ask those questions, get to the root cause, and then build on that.
And there's also other insights as well, because with this guy, he was so handy that he'd go in and fill holes. And then there was another example that we learned from another region where their crews were really good at filling in bullet holes, and you know, that's not possibly a job that they should be doing. So the accounts team want to know, because actually, why are we doing this work, and why is that not outside of contract? So it's not just necessarily about the insights that reflect in your product, but then it's the other wider service design issues that come in and have an impact. So yeah, watch out for Superman. This is a topic I'm keen to raise, and we'll bring this up. We've got another lecture or another discussion coming on around accessibility. And one of our insights or experiences is that if you're really thinking about modernizing your product, the world's changed, and shouldn't we be starting a conversation around building personas that actually incorporate neurodiverse traits? So we've done a piece of work where we looked at the service design for a learning academy, and it specifically targeted a neurodiverse community. So if you're building that into your software, and you know, this is a very chaotic diagram, so, but it's interesting, is if you know that you've got somebody who has sensory or fine motor skill issues, then why not build your UI or your experience so that the journey reflects, or even the affordances in the physical product, they reflect the nature of the target audience. And if your target audience is somebody with dyspraxia or is somebody with autism, there are sensory needs, so build them into your products. And that seems to be a much more modern conversation to be having around, and very few people are doing that. But the world is changing so fast that if you power up LinkedIn, there'll be a whole bunch of people that say, I identify, I'm very proud to be dyslexic, because that gives me non-linear thinking skills that are treasured by the creative community, or coders that have skills within certain neurodiverse areas. So it feels like a conversation. It's still quite raw, and we have reached out to a number of specialists in this area, and it's ongoing. But it's definitely a conversation that we're having, and we're keen to explore it, and push that within product design.
Yep, absolutely.
So, some things to do at home. So for homework, don't worry about making it too big. Start small, get out there, go into the field, talk to people, start building that pipeline into your development process. Start thinking about things early, but actually it's better to pepper out those little experiences early and often, rather than kind of waiting for the big program at the end. And then bring that data in and share it. Don't be precious as well. So everybody in the product team needs to know it, whether it's your C-suite people or your product owner, anybody that has an ownership or maybe even a budget holder. Share that information so you can understand where the guardrails of your project are going and what the needs are that you're going to design.
Yeah, exactly, and like getting alignment. With those people, obviously, will stand you in good stead, as you know, down the process.
That's good point, Scott. So the point about alignment is we always want to avoid those disruptive feedbacks, which it's not that they're disruptive because they're a problem, but if somebody comes up with, oh, I thought it was going to be pink, or I thought it was going to work on blah, is to get that I thought it was going to be, or that big idea, get it out early rather than late, because it's much easier to fix in design research rather than further down the program. Yeah. So disruptive input isn't bad, only when it costs you lots of money.
Yeah, exactly.
And no one likes spending money, do they, Scott?
No, exactly.
So here we've borrowed a common phrase, and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's the idea of what's a better time to save. So do you want to do it 110 or 100? So the issue is that you can avoid wastage by making modifications as early as you can in a product. So starting to explore and be adventurous and innovative, do it as early as you can and as broadly as you can, because it is an established fact that the later you do it, it's going to cost. So it's going to be embarrassing and cost somebody their job, or it's going to cost you a whole truckload of money. So a good UXer should be coming in with lots of different skills to help you unpack the problem and present and plan it, rather than either doing it late in design or doing it in development. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about is just showing the example of high-performance cars. And Scott and I both worked in separate lives on high-performance cars, and this is a very good example for one of Scott's projects, but it's telling the story of a premium brand, and there's a lot of conflict because you've got the stories of substance about the high-performance automobile, you've got the brand team, you've got the car designer, and everyone's fighting for visibility, and everybody's deluging. And you've got this transition from the last year's story to this year's story, and everyone wants to know how the content's going to be manifest. So, everyone's turning, Scott, throw out some wireframes. Yeah. But the problem is, if Scott spends time on the wireframes, he's already, in some ways, failed, because, no disrespect, Scott, but
it's a statement.
How can you represent someone's interest straight away? Because it takes time to put a visual together. So what we're looking at here is, let's start to bubble out the story and work out what's the dominant story, what's the supporting features, and then what sits on the exterior.
Yeah, because to that point, it's like, obviously some people within businesses and organisations are visual, so they expect wireframes and they expect to kind of feedback on that. But to that point, like say, it's sort of too late in the stage. So if you can get that kind of architecture mapped out and agreed upon early, it will kind of stand you in obviously good stead further down the road in the design process and the development process, especially for these examples, like from a global brand perspective. And if you're putting this out into different markets, it's like if you don't understand the story at the start or understand the importance of which story where, and then someone comes in further down the road and decides to change that story in isolation, the knock-on effect, it's like macro, micro, has a massive impact, and it's going to change the timelines, change the delivery dates, and it can be avoided.
That's a good point, actually, because if you think about, if you're rolling out a global brand, if you're selling a car in Russia, you can't sell it without heated seats. Whereas in another market, they have no interest in heated seats. So there's different configurations and car packs, and you want to know, you don't want to be rebuilding a global rollout program with different per market. You want to have a component-based system that you slot things in and slot things out. And then likewise on the engine and transmission story, you've got a new car here with this fantastic supercharger. Is that an engine and transmission story, or is that a driving technology story? And then how does that work? How does it all fit together? How are we going to tell that story? Yeah. So this is the first process. So think about it strategically. But even looking at that content strategy, you can see from driving performance to in-car technology. In-car technology spiders because it's got a much more noisy environment of content that needs to be served in order to get it into the page. So once we've kind of bubbled it out, and we know primary, secondary, tertiary, we've got rough relationships and understandings and people, then it means that Scott is now and the team are able to understand, okay, well, I know where my information hierarchy is or my architecture is, so I'm not endlessly designing buttons or navigation systems or wayfinding.
Yeah.
And then moving that and saying, okay, transferring strategy into design, we can see here that we've got a very basic wireframe we start to look at. So whether you believe or not in above the fold and below the fold, we've got an idea of what's the first message I see, and then what's the secondary, so people can understand. And even if we slot these out and move them around, we still understand the balance of power between the content, between all the content elements. And we can clearly identify what's our hero message. So everybody can then see, because we're not working in isolation, that's then going to go off to maybe 5 or 6 contributory agencies. It's going to go to social media, it's going to probably go to the car designer, the brand team, the product team. There's a lot of interested parties that need to see this.
Yeah, art directors going off and doing the shoots of the cars, whether it's in a location and it's, you know, they've got a certain budget and they go and take this fantastic shot, but it doesn't actually work transferred into a digital product. And that's, you know, desktop and mobile and tablet, all the different device types in between. You know, they might have a tunnel vision of like, oh, we need this shot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's buried in a page that's within the website that's not very well traveled. You know, people don't necessarily always go to it, so it's like taking that context of like the journey that the person takes whilst they're trying to purchase a car, they're thinking whilst they're going in to buy one, and the content that they, you know, will convince them to buy such a high price item. And yeah,
that's a good point, how the story builds.
Yeah, so yeah, it's all to take it all into consideration, because it's not just, you know, one story in isolation.
I like your point about the photo shoot, because if a photo shoot's only a moment in time, so if you've sent an entire team out to Alaska and you've got them doing donuts in the road, but then when you bring it back into the site, it's cropped off and you might as well be in Basingstoke. You know, somebody's going to be questioning why you spend so much money. So it's essential to have these apertures that show exactly where the media is and what the objective is. So of that feature, and people understand, okay, that we're going to feature the product, or we're going to feature a side piece. It's going to be a driving story or a moment of delight story.
Yep. Okay.
And that's just tracking out, so we can see the overall hierarchy of plan, manifestos, design. So bringing this back, just think about other techniques that a UX designer should be thinking about is, before they start wireframing, is thinking about the stages before that, so winding it back to the point that we understand the context. So we're clear about the nature of the problem that we're going to solve. So in Scott's example they gave a moment ago, that you rock up to a house, you've got this amazing gadget that can let you in without needing a human being. Let's be clear that, how did that happen? Well, how did that come about? Because there's only so much we can do through the product. How much can be done outside of the product? So this is about the story and communicating that story, and sharing that with the stakeholder team. Yeah,
I suppose to that point as well, it's maybe a soft skill in like the UX arsenal, if you like, of the importance of being able to tell the story. We can build fantastic products and we can solve problems, but if we can't tell the story and why something isn't right, or where the pain points are to kind of stakeholders and higher up, then we can't bring everybody along that journey and keep people focused on the actual problem. So like I find it personally like a really good way to like frame those problems, bring people on board, and like whether it's in this format or if it's real photography with annotations, but it pictures tell the story better than the words sometimes, don't they? So it's getting you focused into the problem.
And it's also just, that also assumes that it's not always a perfect, everybody starts at the start and goes all the way through. New people join the project, you've got the artifacts that support the story and then can tell to say, oh, we arrived at this point and these are the decisions that have been made. So when new challenges come in, they understand the context of the project. And maybe they're still good challenges, but at least you've got some background information. So really, this brings us around to the point around at what stage do you want to learn? So this is one of Scott's sketches, and in this scenario that you've maybe designed an app and then you realise, oh my goodness, when the user picks this thing up, all these questions are coming around. So are these within the boundaries of the problem that we're solving, or do we actually just focus on a specific kind of restricted corridor of the problem? So do we know, or the research indicates that people are going to get really annoyed that they've opened an account, now they're creating another account, and what's this, now it's daisy chained over to another service, and what is that service? And I don't know, I never dealt with them. And so there's all these other problems around it. Are we going to deal with those? Are we going to address them and fix them? Or for the nature of this project, do we want to ignore them? And the purpose here is that with the research is that have we discovered all of the problems, or as many problems as we can?
Yeah. So to that point, like say the brief comes in from the client and it's like, we are having a low kind of conversion rate on like self-tours of properties. So there must be something wrong with that as a process and an experience. However, when we kind of zoom out and take that higher view and doing the research and actually experiencing it, like we identified the actual kind of like root cause was more around like account creation and sort of the swim lanes, if you like, of getting into the product. So you might have a third party that's servicing properties into the platform as well as directly or in person, but they all kind of feed into this sort of bottleneck problem of creating an account and linking that to the experience. So that's kind of where we kind of figured out and use the storyboard method to kind of hit home of like, well, actually, you thought it was this, but in actual fact, this is the issue. So if we change this as a process and a design, we could upturn and have a more streamlined experience for the actual product itself.
So that becomes a choice. It's like a choice gateway, isn't it? We thought we were solving this problem. it seems that actually the bigger problem is over here. Do we pursue that or do we carry on?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah, just putting it into numbers, do we learn and solve these as a discussion early when it's fast and cheap? Wireframing is cheap, but it still takes time. It takes time to, if you're going to wireframe something out, it takes time to document decisions that actually you could make quicker verbally or conceptually using some of the techniques. Or do you do them in development, where you just rush straight into build and then try and fix it when it's a little bit late and a little bit more awkward for everybody involved? So ideally, what we should be doing, this should be Scott, the little pink pea down here,
that's it,
fixing and coming into to solving, before we get to the big expensive end when it's got a lot of people involved and starts to get really pricey. And then, just the conventional way is wireframing, but then you can't be, sometimes with the physical problem, making a three-dimensional model. Yeah. And just, whatever it is, get it into the hands of your intended user. They won't understand it. And it's easy for people to say, yes, they get it, when actually they don't. So
yeah,
get it in their hands.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose that's one of the other points is like what people say and what they do completely different. So if you give it to them and they experience it, then you can see for yourself things that you've gone off and designed in isolation, and then you put it in someone's hands. It's a completely different feedback, isn't it, that you get out of it?
Yeah, the temptation is to make it shiny because things look better when they're shiny. But the problem is, when I look at the last visual, I'm distracted. I'm going, geez, why did you do yellow buttons with white text? Why? Whereas in actual fact, what we're really looking at is the structure of the page and saying, I'm selling a property, the price is everything, the hero image. You're looking at the whole kind of setup and lockup of the page, and then the fidelity increases, and then you can say, actually, your branding really sucks, and you need to look at your branding as well. But just having those appropriate conversations at the right time in the right place. So I suppose moving it on, like this is another example of working on an AI product for a call center, and the idea that we were pushing in design is that actually, instead of solving the problem in different form factors, is actually just to have a standard kit, and we could have the kit that could then configure. So it's like they're magnetic or they tear off. And so that was the idea. It's quite a departure from what we were asked to do during the client stage. So we wanted to test it with everybody involved. The client loved the idea, but then the risk is that the client loves it and then we can't afford to build it. So the whole point of this visual is to share it and have the discussion. And instead of trying to explain it and it not really making sense and everybody just saying yes, is actually to produce different visuals that would show, okay, well, if we tear it off and we can have a standard configuration, so when I start in the business, I get my standard dashboard and it works like that. I don't understand it or I don't like it, I can pull it apart and I can arrange it around like that. So we can create these different scenarios and say to everyone, have we overreached? Have we produced an idea that's too far? Is it that it's outside of MVP? Is it the thing that makes MVP? But the whole point is to explore quickly and efficiently, and to have that conversation. So this is an example of how you create one kit and it spreads across multiple form factors. So I suppose take quick things. What do we learn here? So yeah, obviously, who wouldn't want to do it cheaply? But make sure that your UX designer is exploring lots of different techniques before they get to wireframing. So diagrammatic visualizations, physical models, 3D visualizations. But the most important thing is let's get that universal alignment so we're all happy that we're all creating the right thing. We haven't gone too far, or we haven't been inventive enough, or we're not going to get somebody come in with a really disruptive idea late in the process.
Yeah, I think, just to reiterate that alignment and kind of communication is like key to the process.
This is just a quick one. This one, really, the role of a good UX designer is that they listen to everybody's needs, they listen to all the functions and the features and wouldn't it be lovely comments, but what they should be doing is saying, okay, based on our persona work, based on our research, based on our analysis to date, the primary task that the widest body within our catchment and our market segmentation is they need to do, and just focus on that 5% and then promote that 5%. So you're very, very clear. This is a new thing. I've never used this before. I get it. Okay, the primary thing that I need to do is this. And then all these other fantastic features and ideas everyone's had, put them in an appropriate place. So whether it's a strategic diagram like we saw earlier, but understand what sits right in front of my eyes and then what sits to the outside edges. So I'm really clear. That's what I need to spend my 5% on.
Yeah, I do.
The flip side of that as well is if somebody comes in and says the budget's being slashed by 50%, then you know actually that the primary thing that you're doing is that's where you spend your money as well. So it becomes part of your roadmap.
Yeah, true, and you can justify why you're focusing on that point and prioritization of that.
Because that happens. People run out of money and or they need to suddenly get something to market.
Yeah, just make it task orientated.
So this guy as well, going back to our personas, like, if we talk about something for a call center, people in call centers don't look like him. They're not models having a great day and working in a lovely, nice, bright environment. Let's be honest. Let's be honest about who this person is. Let's be honest that they're probably not working on nice Apple Macs. They don't have, nice spacious areas. Be real. All of the elements in this picture could be the things that make your product great. So understanding what's going on in the mind of that person and why they've taken that job could be the thing that makes your software really sing. So this is like, if you want to try it, get out there, do some field research, design your basic concepts, make sure you understand your goals, your tasks, make sure that we're being honest, being true to the end user. Is this really a day in their life, or is it a fairy tale?
Yeah, or a kind of interpretation from someone within the business, right? Like they have a perspective on it, but it probably will be different from the actual users and what they experience.
What they really do.
Yeah, what they really do.
So the reason for this guy is, sure, you could say create a prototype early and test it. Obviously, you probably don't want to be the early guy testing that first jetpack, because that's not fun. But so put something together as a demo and see it working and realize, I don't want to work like that, or it doesn't do that, or people aren't going to go to the supermarket using a jetpack, or, so these prototypes and demos in whatever shape and form, whether it's paper or cardboard or modeled in Lego bricks or whatever, whatever it is, it helps people understand, because then somebody can look at it with the mindset of, wow, we were way off on our cost estimates.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. We've had 10 meetings about this and so nobody's admitting that they don't actually know what anybody's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Or they've completely put the jetpack on wrong, or
upside down. That would be a good one, wouldn't it?
I had it once actually, not the jetpack, but we were designing a experience for a tablet, and I think at the time it was in e-commerce, and I think the guy had gone fully kind of like landscape for the iPad mini at the time, and then they took the prototype out into the environment, and then the first thing that the sales assistant did was hold it portrait. So they completely forgot about that as being a possibility, and that was pretty much like the test over. It's like, well, we didn't make it responsive at the time, so like, you can't, or can you use it landscape for now to see what works for us, and then we'll come back with the portrait version, if you like. So
you just reminded me, there's another car example. I joined a company just after they'd built a prototype, and they did this, one of the first head-up displays. So it was one of those that kind of reflected off the window. And I joined just after, and apparently there's 3 people that won the competition to drive this car once they'd made it, and all 3 cars were written off because they didn't prototype it. And when people drove around the drive experience, they were so focused on the thing, and it made them feel sick. So they just kept crashing the car.
Oh, they just took their eyes off the road and focused on the feature.
That was a well-known Japanese brand that did that. Won't say any more. Yeah, a bit awkward. So I mean, this is a more conventional way, but also you can see even the designers, they're prototyping to themselves. They're prototyping before they even take it and put it in the hands of the client, because they want to know that they're not going to be embarrassed by doing the wrong thing. But this is a nice example. Going back to our AI call center, is we're modeling our tear-offs here as blocks first, so we know, okay, our most dominant area in this is like the live chat. Have we got that right, or have we got it wrong? Because it turns out we had it wrong, and that was massively over portioned. And the script guide, because the way that people adhere to the script was actually the main problem to solve, because most of the people that were coming into the call center were untrained. So we wanted to avoid that training budget, and that was the budget that paid for the product. So what the people actually said seemed the problem to solve, but it wasn't right. So we learned that quickly and pivoted on the product. And then we could show an example of what that means. So this whole block here effectively gave us a much better working space when we moved this into here, and we could follow them through and we could guide them through. Hey, say this, nudge that. You could do better here. And that was a much better product solution. So these are our tools, but we're not precious, or somebody's not precious, because they should be alternating and playing with them all the time.
Yeah. So to that point, I mentioned it earlier. It's like what they say and what they do is one thing and another. So like you've experienced that. That's the focus of area. Because that's what they told you, but when you put it in the user's hands, that's not how they want to experience it. So it's finding out those little nuggets of information and, like you say, pivoting to make it.
So the other thing as well is don't be precious. So this is an example of the guys out in the field running user tests. If you knock on 3 doors and you find the same negative answer 3 times, that's good feedback. There's no point going to another 10 doors and finding out the same problem. So Scott's there working away, smashing away in the driver's seat. Change your prototype. You don't need to build up UX artifacts for the sake of it. We're only there to learn and move on. So if you learn something, change it, and then knock on the next door.
Yeah, basically that. Really, we were like driving around in Florida, interviewing residents, and in between doing that, I iterated on the prototype. So it's pretty hacky in terms of like tethering from my phone to the laptop to then test it on my phone as the prototype to then be able to give them and kind of like screen record and take the insights back and personalize it along the way to change the names as it went. So it was like they were the person that was actually logged in, and that person didn't use it the way we expected, so we'll maybe change it and tweak it again, or don't even show it to that person, because from first kind of like interactions we can probably gauge that they're not going to be interested in even entertaining a prototype. So sort of that ability to like think on your feet and pivot and take the kind of... It's
tricky, isn't it, to think about how would a customer approach this challenge, because you're naturally going to come in with your bias, because that's human nature, but to actually take a step back from that and think, how would a customer do this? What would they need? And actually ask the question, are they bothered? Are they really bothered to pick it up and use it?
Yeah, to that point, one chap that we spoke to, he had no interest, sort of senior citizen, if you like. his daughter sort of managed the property for him. So he had no interest in the digital aspect of the products. He was just living in the property. So we weren't going to show him the prototype because he's probably never even logged in or got an account. So you just end up kind of having a bit of a conversation, but you find out insights about the product and how they experience it and issues they might have, which can then...
But you have learned, though, that you need to have a dual user. Because if it's his property and the daughter does it, then you've learned a whole... Without even showing the prototype, and you could only learn that by knocking on doors.
Yeah, so yeah.
So by thinking about your users, understand the environment. There's no point going back to the point around personas and, you know, people who have maybe a very noisy environment. This is chaotic. There's no point designing something that's quite challenging. You've got to have an experience that somebody can work with and understand easily. Without when somebody's shouting in their ear, and when they've got somebody over their shoulder, and maybe multiple people interacting with so he's like the conduit for everything else that's happening. So you can't know that without going there and experiencing that for yourself. So you need to have empathy for the environment that they work in. We need to understand the jobs that this person does, and who is that person, and why are they there, and what are they doing. So there's so much we can get from this story. And actually, why do they need the TV on? What does the TV do? Wouldn't it make, if that's really crucial information, shouldn't that be in here, or is it just background? Is it a distraction? So there's so much great information that we can get from this. And why is it so scruffy? And why are they using these old headsets? And yeah, so it's, you know, getting this think like a user toolkit and using it is really critical. And that's how we arrive at a solution where you've got something that moves from a chaotic situation to hopefully a more organized and useful piece of AI software. So here we go, bromance time. This is your one, Scott.
Is it my one? Yeah. So it's all, I suppose it's all well and good being a UX designer and designing these beautiful interfaces and experiences, but we obviously need to get those built, and we need to be friends to our developers, I suppose, and, you know, talk to them throughout the process and make sure that what we're designing is possible.
Yeah, don't just lob it over the wall.
Yeah. Because they don't quite like that.
So we should be working as a team, but also when something's handed over, that it goes into. So this is an example that working with in telecommunications, but having that kit of parts that's readily understood. So your role might be quite small, but being able to hand that over and hand it to your peers in another company, or it may be a developer, or it may be somebody who's just got front end questions, or even people within the product team. So having a kit of parts that's easily understood and well documented. So we've got flows that they can see the flow through the product without having to understand lots of research. We've got specifications. So here we've got some of the screens here. So you go into a portal and you can clearly understand documentation of what to do, where to find stuff. So they're not spending too much time. So minimum onboarding, minimum hassle, lots of conversation, open door between.
Yeah, the likelihood is you are talking throughout the process. You are, you know, in your stand-ups and your refinement sessions, etc. However the company's working, you are having those conversations and communicating along, so everyone's on the same page and they're aware of the design that you're producing, and that it is possible.
So that's it. That's everything that we wanted to go through for today. So if you want to have a great experience, try some of those tips. We're happy to circulate the deck afterwards and try and implement them, see what happens. It's not rocket science, but that's just what we should be doing.
That's it. Cheers.